So, hello, dear colleagues. I'd like happily to invite here the best ever speakers for my panel, because I'd like to have the best ever speakers at my panel. That is why, for the very beginning, I invite to this panel Oleksiy Vyskup, First Deputy of the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Another person whom we really love a lot, Maxim Nefedov, the head of the State Customs Service of Ukraine. Then I'd like to invite here to the stage Mr. Farid Safarov, Director General of the Directorate of Digital Infrastructure and Transport of the Ministry of Infrastructure of Ukraine. And the last speaker is to be invited here, but I would say he's the most important one because he's the representative of business, so he will be one among the state officials, Oleksiy Evankin, the founder of Open Data Bot. So I think that we'll begin now. First of all, I will ask all of you lots of questions, and then the audience will have an opportunity to ask their questions. So let's start. We have mentioned for multiple times that the main topic of the forum this year is the economy of data. And you know, in the EU, this is one of the most important parts in the development of the unified digital market. So, in fact, as the Europeans say, free-flow data around Europe is considered to be a priority, because if we have a political and legislative base for this development, then in 2020 we foresee that the economy of data will bring 4% of the GDP of the EU. And this is still $739 billion. And still this year the Europeans are really focusing upon the data, the open data, for the development of technologies of AI, and also to solve the biggest issues and problems which the European society faces. So this year there was something incredible going on, that is, that the European Union has updated the directive which is responsible and develops the open data all over Europe. So, if Europe is moving so powerfully and invests so much time into the update of the directive, not to have any legislative or political restrictions, I'll have the first question for Oleksiy Vyskup then. Because as you know, open data is a huge part of the work of the Ministry of Digital Transformation. So I'd like to hear what is going on with our directive, because we know that the Decree 835 was updated several months ago, and even it's already outdated a bit, so we'd like to hear what's the state of the execution of this decree now. And, in fact, what is the ministry going to do to improve its performance overall? Thank you, Oleksiy. Hello, dear friends and colleagues. First of all, I'd like to thank you personally for such an event, and to our partners, the TAPAS project, donors USAID and UKAID, because we have such a cool event, and annually all the open data guys and girls are coming together, and we are discussing cool ideas, we are discussing how to move on, and everybody who is here, we should say that this is our common victory, the sphere of open data in Ukraine. Coming back to the decree, you know the story of the Decree 835, how this document was adopted and how much pressure the Cabinet of Ministers felt because of you, and we are grateful for that. And I do hope that soon there will be the moment when I am sad not to see this process anymore, when for about half a year we had to collect all the suggestions and proposals, and I do remember that we had 200 plus proposals for the last edition of this document. It was a real battle when we tried to get any of the amendments for this decree. So I'd say that the level of the performance so far is rather low. We had another monitoring in the end of spring. We had more than 800 data sets adopted there, which belong to 66 distributors, and the level, unfortunately, is only 43%. That is a bit more than 300 data sets, and this is a great pain for us. And you know, there is a new government now, which I hope will pay lots of attention to this issue, and we are preparing to consider the issues on open data, so I appeal for you. I hope that we'll take any suggestions from you, because we'd like to face any of the relevant issues to open the important data, the anti-corruption data, and to raise the question of the decree, because 43% is the total lack of performance. As of the correspondent of this document in the context of the new Directive 1024 of the European Union, we've got lots of international discussions. In the Decree 835, it is one of the most detailed documents in the world. Well, why so? Because we always trying to put the blocks for any of the state officials, for them not to have the argument or substantiation not to work with this document, but still it's not working. So not a single document in Europe is done in such details, but with the emerging of the new directive, we need to introduce certain suggestions. Last week we finalized within the TAPAS project, we've finalized the analysis of the compliance of our directive to the EU directive, and next week we'll make our report published. So you will see certain disbalances with the modern trends in the European Union, and I hope that during September and October, getting all your proposals and suggestions and having high-quality feedback, will update this decree and make it correspondent to the European one, and also to have the list of data which is approved by this decree. Okay, Alexei, let us make it more precise, please, more specific, because in fact, what are you speaking about? What are the directions of work that our directive has to be compliant with the European standard? Could you mention 2 or 3 key changes or focuses we need to move in 2 directions? Well, if we analyze the latest directive of the EU from the perspective of why we are not correspondent and compliant to it, this is the issue, because the Decree 835 does not focus upon the dynamic data and opening of data through API. Well, you know, we have a certain norm which witnesses that this data is changing, so often it should be opened through API. This formulation is very common, it's not specific, and a consequence of such formulation is that the majority of data is just downloaded as some open formats, but still it restricts its use. It restricts your opportunities as the users of open data. So in the updated edition of the decree, we'll try to solve the next following two issues: to define the list of data which are important and of high priority, as it was done by the European Union, which for sure should be open with the use of API. The European Union has defined the categories of these data. Altogether, it coincides with our common vision. Those are the data about businesses, data about the land, data about the transport and the environment, and so on. There is a very specific list of categories, so I'm sure that we will have our own list of categories which should be compulsorily open through API. Secondly, in the directive paid lots of attention to the dynamic data, that is the data which is created every second, and the access should be live to these sets of data. The most comprehensible example is transport. So we don't have that in the decree, so we again, basing upon the experience of Europe, we'd like to define this list of this data, to define the data which is dynamic, which can be most useful for the business, for the society, for all of you, to define their list and to provide the importance of the access to these data in real time. Thank you, Alexei. Well, in fact, what I'm happy to hear from Alexei out of his comment is that the decree not performed will come to the government. the new Prime Minister and the Vice Prime Minister can give a certain push for this decree to be working, because those data sets, this list out of 900 sets, we are all working on that. I see half of the audience who gave their suggestions and proposals for that. Yes, I'd like to add, in fact, that analyzing the situation in the ministries, maybe you remember that the decree claims the defining of the responsible person or the authorized person. Yes, the organizational scheme did not work. There is an authorized or responsible person who is at the level of the head of department, could be some expert, who doesn't have a single leverage of power to solve any issues, because opening of high-quality data, especially in the spheres which have anti-corruption effect, is a very complicated task. Simultaneously, with the creation of the Ministry of Digital Transformation, we are trying to impose some new organizational approach when each ministry needs to have a regional, a branch CDO, either a chief digital officer at the level of the deputy minister, who will be responsible for the digitalization the ministry is dealing with and for the opening of the data in this sphere. We hope that the organizational model will be working much better, because lots of bureaucratic obstacles are now here, which we cannot solve within the obsolete existing organizational structure. I was a bit late for the opening of the forum, but I could see that there were wonderful news and tasks from the Vice Prime Minister who opened the forum today. So I could see there is the task that in 3 years we should be included into top 3 of countries on the development of open data. Well, this task is rather ambitious, the task for all of us. So let us think today how we can do that. It seems to me that for the last 4 years we've shown huge dynamics. We were included on Open Data Barometer in top 2 countries, which showed the biggest dynamics in 4 years. So if we gain this speed, it seems to me that this task is totally real. Let's think on how we can make it. So, you know, Alexei, we're doing that much, we expand it, we spend so much time, but there are people who need to do that, in fact. So my next question is to Farid, because Farid is responsible for the opening. Alexei, I am the responsible person. Perfect. Yeah, the open data in the Ministry of Infrastructure. So I'd like to hear, in fact, now some more real cases, case. Would you please give me at least a couple of cases, how the data are impacting the state, the public administration, because the ministry was dominated for the open data, so we want to know why. I don't know why, but still.
The very first part of question I will definitely cover, but first of all I would like to thank you for organizing this kind of event, and I want to thank the projects. I want to thank all of the projects that are being developed in the central governmental institutions and body, because it is because of the support of the donors that Alexei has mentioned, UKAID, USAID, TAPAS, because personally I can say that the person who's been working with the digital technologies for a long time, well, open data was a revelation for me, the revelation of the last year. And for the last 11, 12 months, my work, because of Katerina, was mostly dedicated to open data. And there is the decree that really presupposes that we're going to execute it, but there is something worth. There's Katerina, who is, worth in accountability wise, because and much better in quality, because of TAPAS project, the ministry is currently opening up its data sets. So before I turn to answering your questions and giving you 2 cases, I would like to speak about the value that the state sees, for example, as a ministry, what the value the state sees as a ministry, because this is a very good stimuli, first of all, for the market, for the state in open data. Everything's quite simple, because the open data, they will help us to analyze what is going on in our society with the help of others. We have a lot of registers, we have a lot of information, we have a huge amount of information, and we do not analyze or process everything that we have, all the data that we have. And opening this data, it really helps the citizens, the organizations, the businesses to process and analyze those data and to find those violations or breachings that we have. And we're really open to get all of those commands and to try to improve something. But honestly speaking, in the Ministry of Infrastructure, we have around 250 people working, and they cannot cover all of the directions of work. And the civil society here, that's the civil society that is very active, they are doing a lot of work on our behalf. So thank you very much. I'm really grateful that you're doing. And I would like to speak about cases now. There are two significant cases that we're doing together with our international partners. The very first was the interactive map of the bus routes. The interactive map that can be now found at Taxi.org UA platform that has been collaborated together with Tapas. What it is about? So basically we had 4 data sets, and we've turned it into interactive map. So why does the state need it? Because we can visualize where we have the bus routes, where we have some problems, when we have to cover additional interregional or international routes. We see all of the intermediary stations when we do not fulfill the demand of our citizens. Well, basically now we are visualizing the Excel tables, and even the people who are not professionals in transportation, like for example, I'm not like that. I already see where are some problems where we have the bottlenecks that we have to close in order to provide the high-quality services for our citizens. For businesses, especially for the carriers, that is an important and relevant mechanism because they actually see where the state already has the licensed routes, where they can participate in the competitions to cover those routes, and how they can make money. That's the most important. And as far as we now have the opportunity to have visa-free traveling to the European Union, then the demand of the bus travels, which is the cheapest way to travel around the world, now the demand for bus travels is quite high. And we're turning to the group number 3 of the citizens, so the people can get to the site to see the schedule, what routes they operate, so on and so forth. So that is a very specific case of how the open data might be used by the state and the civil society. Another case that has been just recently presented by Alexander Krykly and Vice Prime Minister Mr. Mikhailo Fedorov, and that is the portal that has been developed in our collaboration with the COST project that has been dealing with the specific international standards on developing the infrastructure projects. That was the project that was called Transparent Infrastructure that has been now given to us. That was developed with the help of the NGO and non-commercial organization, and when then the state, as Autodor and our road services, when they have seen the effectiveness of the system, they've joined the project actively. When the project has been already developed, in the biggest part it has been then given to the ministry, and the ministry took the commitment to finalize the system. So this system gives us an opportunity to track not only the process of constructing the road, but what is happening after the road has been constructed. 40% of information are being retrieved from Prozoro. So having this opportunity, I would like to thank Maxim Nefedov for having created this platform. And now we can retrieve data from that. Another part of information is unfortunately currently being manually filled in, but it's been updated by the Autodor organization. So on a daily basis, every midnight, we're updating the data. So every day you can see the real situation of what is happening with the road. Alexei has some questions to me? No? Okay. When the ministry that deals with the digital transformation has no questions to ask, that's good. But this is just the first stage, because for the next stage we would like to monitor the financial situation with the road construction, because all of the documentation, they have to be fulfilled on a daily basis to this portal. And then we will have a very effective tool, not only to control by Prime Minister, by the heads of the executive bodies. We will have the tool that will give the opportunity for every citizen to control how the money of the road foundation, of the road fund, are being spent, and whether we're really constructing the road or they exist only on paper. But I would also like to say that open data and everything like that is very good, but unless the state If the state, for example, the state started to collect the data, then the state learned to categorize the data. But I do believe that the next trend that is going to be the state. So the state would learn to analyze the data independently, just like the civil society currently does. Because this is a good opportunity for the state to make money. Because if the businesses like Open Data Board and so on and so forth, they know how to deal with this data, then the average citizen, they do not know how to decipher JSON format. And the state has to create these analytical models that will provide you with the final information. There's a lot of consulting companies, lots of big players that want to come to Ukrainian markets, want to engage investment to Ukrainian markets. They will need these analytic modules. And in order to do that, the state has to engage good analytical specialists, the state has to pay them good salary and to provide the services on analyzing data. And I do believe that is going to transform, first of all, the understanding what bureaucracy is, what state official is. And they will turn the state officials not only in public offices, not only to the people who are, let us say, in a popular wording, the servant of the people, but they will also turn this person to an analyst, an analytics specialist, and will provide the opportunity for the citizens to retrieve the data. Okay, thank you. Interesting case, and actually, I have a lot of hopes for the Ministry of Infrastructure because Myroslav Krekli, the new minister, is one of the key people in the government who really promotes open data. And last year he opened the most popular data set at Data.gov.ua on transportation. And I have another additional question, because we have discussed it with Alexei that our legislation has to move and has to be synchronized into European direction. Can you please tell us what is going to be the following movement for the Ministry of Infrastructure, to what standards, and give me the idea of what you're going to be doing next year, so that I would invite you next year to this panel. Well, there's going to be like public commitments, public commitments to be taken. Well, actually, we're not afraid of giving the public commitments. Okay, but let us speaking about Vladislav Krekli. I would just to say that, remember, on Friday when the ministers have started the very first day in work, there was a digital session. He given us already the task that so on the second his working day on Monday, we would be ready to answer all of his questions in digital schemes. So let us say, Alexei said that there is a low execution rate, but I would like to say that the very first obligation and commitment that ministry is going to take is that we will make it almost to up to 100%. This is the rate on execution. I don't know Alexei's evaluation on our work, and you didn't have to voice it out publicly. But I would like to say I know that we are not executing the strategy fully in 100%, because currently we're reviewing the database sets that we have. We have engaged the people from the civil society sector just to understand what else they want to receive from our data sets, from our data, because I do recall these meetings when the representatives of civil society, they told us that they would like to retrieve information on these data sets, and we said, like, why would you need that? Because that was about the seaports. And why? Because most of the private sectors are the main players in the sea sector. And I recall that we have Stanislav Vozikov here. He was the next day on some kind of conference. He made a photo for me that most of the services are being provided in seaports by the state. Okay, you're not right, so please open the data sets. This is basically like we have our own vision. It's still framed because we are being limited to those walls that we are located in, but there are some people who are specializing in specific directions, and sometimes they might be much better aware on information sets than we are. So we are, because of on his behalf, of going to open even like 99% of information is going to be now opened. But the next big request that we had was to support dynamic data from the GPS trackers. So we will be able to show the movement of all transportations, like not to advertise it, but like EasyWay does it as an application. And that really helps us to understand what is the movement of the public transportation is when it's going to be at my bus stop. The same way, yesterday at 11 o'clock in the evening, we've been together with the railway specialists. We've been discussing what other additional services we will be providing. And we thought that we're going to be able to provide the same data for the railway connection. If the trains that we still use to communicate, to transport ourselves in between the regions, then still, for example, the electric trains that could work around the cities, they are still uncontrolled. So we really do not want the person to be waiting for a long time or to be late for their train. We just want them to retrieve the data on the railway transportation also. And I do hope that we will be able also to provide information for the cross-regional bus connection, so you would see that in dynamic way. I will already say that we have an objective barrier, the financial barrier, because we have to provide the hardware for all of this transportation in order to monitor it and to track. We will try to prioritize everything in that way so that we would monitor the transportation and that will be available for our people. So you've all recalled what he has promised us. Just recall that, and we'll ask him about it next year for him to be audible. Okay. I would like to turn to our next speaker, and I would like to pass the next question to Maxim Nefyodov, who was the main engine behind the reform of procurement, and Prozoro has already brought millions of hryvnias in saving for Ukrainian budgets, and I do believe that this is the project that Ukraine is really proud of at this moment. And you know, when Maxim has been set as the head of customs, the very first thing that I've had, it was like, oh, something's going to start now. And I was thinking about it in data connection. But okay, Maxim, you're a new person at your position, so I would like to ask you about your plans. In what way the management of data, using of data, can reform the customs service? Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to once again participate in Open Data Forum, to be a part of it. I'm a very pragmatical person, especially when we're speaking about the usage of data, because it's not some kind of a final goods, like as no information must be free and we had to throw everything to internet just because we would like to reach the abstract transparency. It also gives us an opportunity to build ecosystem. It has the opportunity to build us the new product that the state will not have the resources or inquisitiveness or desire to create. It helps us to have the control for the people, to control to the people who are hired by the taxpayers' money. It really helps to improve the productivity of work. So basically everything I'm about to do in the customs service is going to be connected to those main directions and main statements. And I really would like it to be turned into specific products and to specific measurable results, but not in some abstract data sets and gigabytes of information that we will open just in order for them to be there. And of course, it's quite clear that we're at the very starting stage. We're at the stage of the IT auditing, because if you do not understand where you are, you can keep on moving to any directions and just keep on saying that the place where you got to, it was primarily the place you wanted to come. This audit is going to be completed by the end of the year, and by the end of the year we will have some strategy on digital transformation of the customs, because for customs everything is mostly connected with information processing, and among all of the state organizations and institutions, the customs is the one where the informational flows identify the quality of work, both inside of their security functions and outside for the people who are using the services of the customs. The customs have three main control points. The first is the exchange of the data with international partners. iPhones live in Poland worthing $1,000. In Ukraine, they have the ceramic tiles worth of $10 worth. Of course, if we will have the automatical data exchange, not only about the prices but also about the weight of the transportation and retrieving data from tax-free services, retrieving the data on recognizing tablets or passport scanning, then of course it's going to be a huge step forward. The second block is the physical control on the border. This is how the people believe the customs are. Like a car coming or a carrier going, then someone physically assesses it, like weighting it, scanning it, or whatsoever. This is also like all of the equipment. This is all just pieces of iron if we do not understand how are we going to use it properly. It's quite clear that if you're working there, if those scanners that are currently being mounted into hills, then it's okay, good that no one. It's good that the one thing that really is lucky for us that they didn't mount it vertically, but basically this information has no use if it's not being connected to the specific ticket, to the specific case, to the specific declaration. Like you don't know who was sitting there at the desktop of the scanner. No one knows like whether the car was in the scanner and the car that left the scanner is just the same car or something has been changed in a way. So building a very high quality informational system is also important here. And the third important moment is the statistical analysis of what is going on in our export and imports. So looking for a very interesting trends when we, like, for example, our country being overloaded by ceramic tiles or plastic flowers or second-hand or furniture or whatever, or some other suspicious things when the companies are being transferring unnatural combinations of goods. Like, for example, from Kiev Customs, a real example, there was like clothes, apparel, and the cutting circuits. So basically it's really hard for me to imagine the business that will have this connection of the goods together. There are some links and connections between the companies, like for example some companies are only being processed by specific inspectors. Of course it is possible there are some positive cases in that, but analyzing the data here is very important and very useful. And also export and imports are very big ecosystems and the state will not be able to do everything in those. So it's very important for me so that we have the open access to the customs information, of course, concealing the confidential status and having the access for like Open Data Boat or some other applications or companies that will be building additional services around this open data sets and are going to make these processes more efficient. And the final thing that we believe is going to happen quite fastly on opening information, we are now providing a draft law on opening the depersonalized data on customs. We would like to open all of the information without violating commercial secrets, and we'd like to open all the information that is possible. I'm really used to that, and I do believe that all of the people are used to that, that every negotiations in the tender council starts with asking to share a link that has everything. And for me, as the chief of many services, I never had more information than I had by that link, because everything is already being online, like the timestamps, the documents connected to every specific tender documentation. So everything that we have can be connected in one link. So, and of course, situation at the customs, it's been a little bit psychologically depressive for me when every complaint, every discussion is started with like, I am company X, there is the red container somewhere over there, the number of declaration is this and that, but then we've changed it to like that, and then now we're trying to identify where it is now. So yes, of course, for me, that's I would like to get to the same situation that we had before, when we have link for every specific export-import operation, when all of the documents are being uploaded to that, and everyone has their level of access to that. The civil society has one level of access, then the executive services have a different one, the employees of our services have a different level of access. And of course, we would like to be like open data, like JSONs, they're not really interested only for data analysts. So of course, we have to build specific modules that are going to analyze the data, and they will go into translate it from data to useful information that might be used for businesses.
We've done it not only in the acquirement and procurement with the support of lots of donors and lots of organizations. With the same we've done in the Ministry of Economy. We opened the data on all of the sales within Prozoro sales in the projects about the information on the public companies and state companies. Of course, we'd like to go on with this process at the Customs Office. So if I understood right, at the next Open Data Forum, we'll be speaking about the open data of the customs, right? Well, I don't know whether all the data can be open, because, of course, we don't say about the depersonified data and about the names of the companies, because they will be hidden, but still, I'd like the information system of the customs, which is rather good, especially taking into consideration the staff and financial restrictions. My colleagues have created a huge foundation which we need to create and to develop and to construct even more. We also have the open part of this information, and everyone should have access to it. So the question is how to construct the normal system of the work with complaints and CRM on those complaints, to share information with the colleagues, for instance, with the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Ukrainian Railway. We are also working on the mechanism when the data will be automatically uploaded from the information system for the customs. So this is not just the open data for the sake of the open data. It will speed up the processing and the info about a certain train for about an hour and a half, and it's a lot within the economy. An hour and a half quicker for each train can sum up to dozens of thousands of man hours and the capabilities of business and so on. So we've got lots of tasks ahead of us, lots of successes which can be quick wins, and lots of global projects like joining NCTS, the Directive on the Common Transit, which was this year voted by the Parliament, by Verkhovna Rada. So I think next year we'll have lots of work to be integrated fully into the so-called customs visa-free regimen. Well, you're in the beginning of this way, but here we have the whole community of open data, and nothing is possible without the community, because Dozoro was playing the huge role when Prozoro was being created, and now they use the open data to create something. What would you ask our community? How can they help you in your reforms of the new customs office? Well, first of all, come to the contests and competitions. We've got lots of vacancies, and especially the ones which are connected with the software development. They have the rather good wages and salaries. You will like the remuneration conditions. So as of the external support, we'd like to see requests for certain precise products or information. We should open not just within 100 terabyte of data, please try to dig up something, but at least requests for certain specific APIs or data sets or any specific options for cooperation. From my behalf, I can guarantee that digital first and open first are not just words. I'm totally sure that all the information which the state has is not the information of the state authorities, is the information which belongs to the citizens of Ukraine. It needs to be open in the most convenient and, if it's possible, free way, or maybe with some minimum payment for that, to be transformed into precise products which improve the lives of the citizens. So come with your demand, and the customs office will definitely satisfy your demand. You heard it, right? If you have any precise or specific proposals about certain data sets, about the customs work, and your proposals and suggestions are on the depersonified data, so please come to Max. He is here and he will listen to you. I'm happy to hear that. But I'll come to our last speaker, Oleksiy. It's really pleasant for me to sit here because I like to listen to the promises of state officials. I'm listening to the promises all the time, but still still I'm happy that Oleksiy here at this panel is representing the most famous startup of open data, Open Data Bot. And in fact, as a business, he's totally expressing his opinion and feedback which open data should become even more open. But we can promise whatever we can from the ministry and so on. But I'd like to ask Oleksiy, what do you think? How can the state help you? Because maybe we think that we know, and Oleksiy Vyskup maybe thinks he knows how to help, but still we need to understand that the business can have different needs. So what do you think? How can the state help you at this very moment? Thank you so much. I've got lots of things to mention, so I'll try to be very quick, and that is why I will speak Russian. What is economy of data for me? It's when the city publishes the data about the trips which are anonymized and grouped according to the unified e-ticket. The cell phone operator publishes aggregated anonymous data about people moving, and the scientists and startups, the business, analyze that, and the city gains the understanding how to optimize its transport infrastructure and public transport. The startups and business understand where there are opportunities for the transport companies, and here where we wake up, because our reality is totally different. A week ago, the State Court Administration wrote to us the information about the court files, this is the provision of the Decree 835, does not exist. That is why we cannot just get it. Or the State Tax Administration for 3 years is answering that the registration address of the private sole entrepreneur is the personal information. So the Ministry of Justice publishes this information for 3 years on a weekly basis, and now even on a daily basis, and then we have an answer that this is a personal information and it will never be published, and they will never improve the data in this way. So it turns out that in this bad nightmare we have one good piece of news. More than 500,000 of people who are in Open Data Bot are waiting for this data and want to work with that. So I think that up till the end of the year there will be 1 million of us. So in fact open data is what unites people, the business, with the state, which gives us an opportunity to be together with the state. And whatever the state needs is to improve the data, and whatever the business needs, as the minister mentioned, the new projects can be done by the entrepreneurs only, to create new projects and to improve the older ones. So what can we do in the open data in Ukraine? First of all, we need to speak the common language. If we take the person from the left part of the hall or from the right part of the whole and ask about the second line of the second provision of the Decree 835, and this is the principle of the open data, which is openness by default, the person from the left part and from the right part will tell totally different points what that means. And I will tell you even the third option, because for me this is the publication of all the information except personal. So it turns out, just think, what can be the personal information in the address of the retail point of alcohol sales? There is no information, but we cannot get that. And because of that, you cannot understand whether this bar is scary or they just are not licensed for the retail of alcohol sales. We just don't have the address, we just have the company which owns this license. But how much retail points it has, we don't know. So it is enough, I think, that we need to write it down in the Decree 835 that openness by default is the full publication of the data except personal data. The distributor has to argument the exclusion of the data for the publication. That is to give the presumption for the publication. When we do that and begin to communicate with the common language, we will have the common understanding what is the openness by default, what is inclusiveness, interoperability. We need to have some other levels of cooperation. Today, here we have from each ministry, a person from each ministry. I've seen them. This person could spend this day to get all the info from all of the projects with the open data, their remarks we are having. Each project has already prepared them, sent them out as the requests of the public information, and got what we're usually getting. After processing it in a week, it seems to me that this person, and in fact this is the CDO whom we were mentioning in the morning, they can create the roadmap of open data for each ministry. Where it will be mentioned, this register will never be published because we don't have it. Don't even wait for it. Or this register will be published in half a year with such data set. Or this register is already published. We have 3 stars, everything is cool. So when we just do these 2 simple things, in a year we won't be ashamed to sit here in this hall. By the way, I totally agree with you that we need to be trained how to speak with the common language, because even among these people, the panel discussion, we have the different understanding. What is the openness by default? So, Alexei, in your opinion, top 3 data sets which should be open for the next government, what should he speak about? We are waiting for the data from the Customs Office, of course, and we have 4 drivers of data: Ministry of Justice, the Tax Service, the Court Administration, the Ministry of Infrastructure. They all have something to improve. So there should be 4 roadmaps where all of us would know what we should expect for there. Okay, would you like to answer? Okay, up till the end of October we'll give you this roadmap. Perfect, we have some of the suggestions. Such a productive panel we have. So in fact, this is the end of me questioning them. Now we've got couple of minutes left, and we have an opportunity to listen to 2 questions at least. Who wants to ask a question? Would you raise your hand for me to see you? We've got 2 mics. Do we have questions? Could you give the mic, please? Yes, to this man. Would you introduce yourself for sure? Yes, hello. My name is Volkov Volodymyr. I'm the head of the enterprise PAS-SB, the certified company of Huawei. I have the question to the customs. In 1992, I began having a separate customs post at Kyiv Riva station. It was the post with the raw material. The brokers were really respected. The Americans came to us and they suggested a very simple model for the customs officers. Let the brokers have relationship with the business and you should follow the brokers. And at this stage, this cooperation of the business and the state, for about 4 or 5 times it was not working at the customs office. So now, would the broker service achieve some format of the world level? Thank you. Well, this question is not about open data. I will definitely speak with you later, but I can say that we have a unique situation now when the brokers and the guarantees which are working for the customs and help the customs to protect them from the unfair counteragents, they are working here against the customs office and they are helping those counteragents to work with customs office. Yes, I'm really interested to change this situation, but let us speak behind the whole. Yes, this is the cool question, but it's not about the open data. So one question should be about the open data, please. Oh, whom should I choose? Is it about the open data? If it is, let's give him the mic. Good day. The question is to the Ministry of Infrastructure. There is the project of Mobilari. We're shooting 360 like Google, but still open data. Does the Ministry of Infrastructure ready to take a similar project? Is it a suggestion, a proposal, or just a question? Because the propositions should be discussed not here, in fact. Well, in fact, yes, I know this technology. Look, the Ministry of Infrastructure is ready to involve any technologies which allow to improve the performance of our functions and the quality of any logistical and transport services. In any case, but as for the precise technologies, I can't mention any of them because, first of all, we have the transparent procurement system in the state. So any contractor who performs any and provides any services, it should be defined but a bit of a different procedure. But from the point of view of your technology, I agree, it's really of high quality. Okay, then I think I'll give an opportunity to have the last question now. I am so generous. But about the open data only. Still, I don't hear much about the open data. Here is the hand. I can see it. And after that, we'll finalize and begin the next panel discussion then. Hello everyone, my name is Alexander. I'm dealing with the development of city-scale project, and I have the question about one of the data sets which was mentioned in the Decree 835, and you mentioned about the world rating of openness. So this data set refers to the 5 top priorities according to the Charter of Open Data. The data set which has to be published by the state. I mean the state land cadastre, the land registers. So, for the next edition of Decree 835, everything was okay. We had some of the data from the state land cadastre in the Decree 835, but in the new edition they were totally changed and they were transformed into the public cadastre map. So when shall we change or correct this situation? And when will this data set be open? I think this is the question for Oleksiy, and it's very relevant for the new government. Well, why they vanished from the decree, I tried to answer when I was speaking in the beginning, because, yes, the process of the decree approval was a real hell. 200 pages of remarks, and behind each of the remark there is an authority, a state authority, which is very harsh because it wants to take into consideration each remark. Otherwise, we cannot make it into consideration of the government. Yesterday, I listened to the speech of the new Minister of Economy, Mr. Milovanov, in the TV show, and it seems to me he mentioned for about 20 times about the openness of the state land cadastre and about the plans to open it for 100%. I can only approve that in the new edition of the Decree 835 we'll get all of those provisions back and all those clauses back. And I think that this year it's totally possible. Yes, I can add, in fact, that this situation, well, I know about this situation while I was working in the Ministry of Economy, and I gave all of that information to my followers because the land cadastre came to the Ministry of Economy, and we definitely have some chances for the victory. I thank my panelists that we were told about the plans, that we had lots of promises. Let us remember those promises, and thank you so much, and in a couple of minutes we'll have the next panel discussion.